welcome back. Today we'll be setting up a selection cursor and placing our first placeholder tower. Now I would usually sit here for a while and just kind of talk about what's happening, but I think today we're just going to kind of jump straight into it and, talk while we go. So this is what we've come up with so far, right? We've got a tile map, basic tiles, camera, and some file structure stuff. Now let's come down into our file system, into our resource folder, and down into main here. We're going to right click on main, create a new folder, and this is going to be for the highlight underscore tile. And then we'll create another new folder as well in main, and we're going to call this the tower folder. So first thing I want to do is do the highlight tile, because that's just a really cool little one that we can kind of mess around with to start something visual. So we're going to come up here at the top and we're going to click add new scene. We're going to create a 2D scene, and we are going to hit Control A, or we can click this little plus icon, or we can right click, add child node. We want to add a sprite 2D. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rename node 2D to highlight, I can spell, there we go, tile. Hit Control S and save. Then I'm going to come down to scenes, main, and save that into my highlight tile folder. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new script to it, and we can pretty much remove all of this, and we're going to give this a class underscore name of highlight tile. So the highlight tile is basically just going to be a selection cursor, right? It's going to hover, or it's going to be a cursor that hovers around wherever your mouse is and is kind of linked to the grid that we want to build. So to do that, we're going to do something really, really simple. We are going to create a function, and we are going to just call this follow underscore mouse underscore position. It's going to be of void return type, because it doesn't need to return anything. And all we're going to do here is we're going to create a variable. We're going to call this the mouse underscore position. And this is going to be a vector 2. We're going to set this equal to, actually this could be a vector 2i, so an integer type. We can set this equal to the get underscore global mouse position. Now, the thing that we want to do here, right, if we just get global mouse position, what's going to happen is it's going to get every single position that it could possibly be, and which usually is in the hundreds, and it's a bit weird. It's more pixel position, if anything. We want to do this as a grid position. So to do that, we just need to divide it by our cell size, which in this case is 64. So that will basically lock it to the grid. So to show this off, what I can do here is I can just call a print, and I can print out the mouse position, like so. And just above that, I'm going to print one more time. Actually, one thing we're going to do here is we're going to use something a bit different. We're going to use print underscore debug. So print debug is a good habit to get into using, because what this does, actually, I'll leave this one as print and I'll just show you. So we have print debug and we have print. So in print debug, I'm just going to put in the global mouse position. Sorry, get underscore global mouse position. There we go. Now I'm going to hit Control S and save. And we are going to very quickly just create a process function here. And we are going to call that new functionality like so. Now what we're going to do is we are going to come up to the top right and we're going to hit run current scene. So that's just going to run the current scene. And as you can see here, this is printing out a lot of things, and every time I move my mouse around, we're getting two different positions. So the first one we're getting, which should be this one. Yeah, so the first one we're getting, which is this one, has a really big number and a really small number. This is like pixel position, and the second one we're getting is the actual mouse position kind of divided into grid steps, right? So this is at grid coordinate 17, 0, whereas the other one is at pixel coordinate 1121 minus 14. Now, I don't technically think it is pixel coordinate, but we basically just want to divide it. Is it global? Yeah, it's just global position, whereas this is your local position. So now that we know that we are getting our, let's just remove that print debug. We'll put that here instead. Make it a bit more visible that we are getting our grid positions. That's the wrong button. There we go. Now, as you can see, up in the top left here, the very, very top left of our screen, 0, 0, and then 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 5, 0, as we kind of move across. Now, we want to basically show that to the, we want to link the position of this tile, or this highlight, to our mouse position. Now, how do we go about doing that? Well, really cool thing is no 2Ds have a position, right? If I go into the transform here, they have position. And what I can do here is I can just go, the position is equal to the mouse position. Now I'm going to once again times that by 64. And I'm going to print out the position because I want to check something whilst I do this. Let's find out what happens. I will click the right button on the first try. So as you can see, we're now getting a bit of a different number, but it is still locked to the grid, right? You have the 0 here, 64, 0, and that's just kind of how it's going to keep increasing. So that more or less locks our position to our mouse. Now let's make this a bit more visible. Let's go to our Sprite 2D and give it a texture. Go to our assets and tiles, and remember we only have the sprite sheet. Now, if everybody followed me along when we were doing this, we can right-click the res file, and we go Open in File Manager. We should have the Downloads folder in here with our .gdignore, which is ignoring all of the making Godot ignore all of the files in here. So that means we can go into PNG, we can go to default size, and we can scroll down to whichever tile we want. I'm thinking we want probably this tile right here. This looks like a good select tile for us. Or even better, we can just take this invisible tile here, which is even better because it's just a highlight at that point. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to come down to copy. Then I'm going to go over to my tower defense tutorial project, go into assets, into tiles, right click and paste that in. Now, whilst we're here, let's go and also grab a tower, yeah? So to do that, I'm going to go all the way back to my downloads folder, tower defense assets, PNG, default size, and I want to come down and I want to grab this little green tower here, the tower defense tile tile 249. I'm going to right click on that, hit copy, go back to our tower defense tutorial, assets, tiles, and paste. So now we have our tiles. Let's go back to the editor, let it update. And on the Sprite 2D here, we're just going to pull up that highlight tile onto the Sprite 2D. You Control S and save. And now, if we look in here, we have a slight problem. Actually, I'll show this off in the project. So the highlight tile is technically working. As you can see here, this top corner isn't actually being highlighted correctly. It's only highlighting the top left of that corner, and that's actually because of the origin. So the origin of this is center on this tile. We don't want it to be center on the tile. We want it so the highlight tile is more or less like this. Now, we don't want to just move it like that. That adds some weirdness to this. What we want to do is come down to the offset under Sprite 2D and then uncenter that and hit Control S and save. That way our origin is still in the top left corner, but the tile is now on the bottom right. If I press play, put my mouse here, and as you can see, we now have a little selection tile following how our mouse should be following it. Or following our mouse entirely, and being locked to a grid. That's really cool. So what that means here is we can go to our main scene. Under the main here, we can left click on it, and we can use Control-Shift-A, or we can just right click, and we can instantiate a child scene, and we can instantiate the highlight tile. I'm going to hit Control S and save, launch our game, and see that this is now locked to the grid. Now, there are some small positioning issues with this. As you can see, it's not entirely accurate. So we're going to have to mess with some offsets at some point, but for now we have a kind of position that we can grab just doing this. Now, to make sure that this print stops overloading my console, let's go delete that. The other thing print debug kind of shows, by the way, I didn't really explain it too well, but it shows the exact line and script that that print statement is being used at, so you can always find it. So get a good habit to get into using print debug. So now that we have our highlight tile, let's go and create another new scene. It's going to be another 2D scene. We're going to hit Control A, and we're going to add a Sprite 2D to this. We're going to rename node 2D to tower. Now we're going to hit Control S and save, and we're going to go and save that down into the tower folder. Now for now we don't need a script on top of this, we don't need anything on top of this, it's just our little placeholder tower. So what we can do is go into main, we're going to add a script to our main node, because right now all I want to do is just show you how to do some really basic things, and then we'll eventually be separating our code and kind of making it a lot easier to manage, and actually employing some proper code separation techniques and a bunch of other fun things. So I'm going to give this a class underscore name of main. I'm going to remove the ready and process function here. Now we're going to need some variables. Very first one we're going to want is an export variable. So to do that, we're going to write at export var, and then we're going to write tower underscore packed underscore scene. I really just cannot type today. There we go. And this will be of type packed scene, not packed byte array. And we're going to set that equal to null. Now, setting it equal to null basically just means, hey, there is nothing here, but it can be populated, right? So I can quick load, and then I can come down to the tower.tscn and just double click that. Now that is saved in this variable for now. Next thing we're going to want is access to our tile map layer and of course our highlight tile. So let's do something more fun. Let's left click, drag this over, and before we drop, we're going to hold down Control and release. That creates an onReady variable, just pre-typed in and preset as a tile map layer like so. Now we're going to do the same thing for the highlight tile. This is something that we will have to change in the future, but for now it will do fine. Now, to handle what we want to handle next, we are going to want to access something fun. We are going to want to access the function for unhandled input. Now, unhandled input is very specific here. It says here, called when an input event hasn't been consumed by input or any GUI control item. So that's really all we need to know right now. More or less, this is just the kind of chosen way to actually start handling and messing around with listening to keyboard inputs, i.e. keyboard key presses or mouse presses. And to do that, we're going to need access to something. We're going to need to go up to project settings, our input map, and we're going to want to add a new input into the input map. Now I'm just going to call this left underscore mouse to signify that we are clicking our left mouse button. Now I'm going to come to the plus icon here, and in this box where it says listening for input, I'm going to left click, and it will now give me my left mouse button. I'm going to click OK, click close, and what that's done is basically created a variable for us to be able to see if it's being used, and it's now named left mouse button. So what I can do here is I can go if event dot is underscore action pressed. As you can see there, it auto-corrected. It popped up with left mouse button, so it kind of knows what I'm looking for. So if left mouse button is pressed, I want to do something. Well, what we're going to do right now is we're just going to go and use our new print underscore debug, and we're going to print out click. Let's add a little exclamation mark to that and make sure we know we have clicked. So let's press play, run the project. As you can see, tile is still following, and if I left click, there you go. In the debug down here, we're getting click. And it's telling us, and this is the print debug specific thing, that it's coming from the folder location, so scenes main, so the scenes folder, the main folder, and then the main.gd script, line 11, function unhandled input. Really, really good information when you were debugging. But this is now listening to our left mouse button. That's really cool. Now, a really cool thing about the input manager real quick is left mouse button doesn't just need to be left mouse button. I can click add event, and I can press, I don't know, let's press spacebar, click OK, click close, click play, and now I'm going to press the spacebar instead of the left mouse button, and it's getting a click, and now the left mouse button, and we're still getting a click. So that is one of the really cool, powerful things about this kind of input map system that we can use here, is we can have multiple keybinds for just one thing. That also is a very big thing when it comes to creating user set keybinds and things like that, but we will go into that very, very, very much in the future. So what do we want to be doing here? Well, we want to basically be placing a tower where we click for now. It doesn't need to cost any resources. It doesn't need to check for anything else. We just want to go tower, go here. So let's go and make tower go here, right? Actually, before we do this, let's check, make sure we have not set a sprite for our tower. Let's set a sprite for our tower. And remember, we're going to have an offset issue, so we need to change the offset to centered like so, or turn off centered. Hit Control S and save. And we will need to modify this in the future for certain reasons that we will definitely stumble on. Fun little things. But for now, we have our texture saved, we have everything set up. Now we just need to get to the placing of the tower. So what I want to do here is I want to grab the position of the cell that we are currently clicking on. So to do that, I want to create a new variable. And this is going to just be called cell_position. Now there's a reason why we're doing this. So let's set this as a vector to I, because our cell position should be a vector to I. We're going to set that equal to nothing for now. So why I'm grabbing the cell position here is because we're going to want to grab the data we set in the, I think, previous episode, where we set data or custom data to the tile sets for buildable. Now, to grab access to that, we need the position, of course, so we need to know which tile is actually being clicked. So what I can do here is I can go cell position of type vector to I is equal to the tile map layer dot local to map, and then I can pass through the tile map layer dot get underscore local mouse position. Now what this is going to do is get the mouse position specifically where I click. So let's use another little print underscore debug and kind of make sure that this is functioning how we think it's working, right? So let's hit Control S and save. Let's click play and click 87. So up top left here should be 0, 0. That's -4, -3. Oh, now I wonder why that is. Is it by chance because we have offset our grid? It might be. But let's move on and just make sure things are functioning a little bit more. So next thing that we can do to check is create a new variable here called cell_data. And we can set that equal to the tile map layer dot get underscore cell tile data. Now we just want to pass through the cell position. Now that's going to return the data of the tile that we click on. So let's go and show that off real quick. So if I click on this tile, you can see there, it's to replace the print debug statement. Let's let's just add that to our print debug real quick. There we go. Now if I click on this tile, we're getting tile or data for that tile, and that tile, and that tile, and that tile. And yeah, as you can see here, all of these tiles here are the same, whereas this one's different. This one is the same as the previous one I clicked on. Now that means these are the same tiles, right? Same for this one. This one should be different. This one should be different. This one should be different. Most of these should all be the same. Really cool little thing. So the next thing we want to do is actually get access to that custom data, right? So let's go dot get underscore custom data. And for now, we are just going to pass through the string buildable. Now, why am I passing through the string buildable? Well, if you are watching these videos like one after another, you'll probably know that's because the custom data we set down here is for the buildable Boolean. So we want to know if a tile is buildable. So what this is going to do now is instead of returning the data, it's just going to return true or false, depending on what the tile is set to. So let's find out. Let's click on this tile. As you can see, it's false. Let's click on this tile. Now it's true, and false, and false, and false, true. So we are now registering which tile we can actually build on or not. It really is that simple, just 2 lines of code and 1 string. Now, as I said, this will get changed. Hell, what we can do here to make sure we avoid any user error in the future, we can use Control X and cut that out. Now we're going to come up top here and we're going to create a constant, and this is going to be for the custom underscore, actually we'll just call this is underscore buildable. And we'll set that as a bool. We'll set that equal to, oh wait, no, sorry, this needs to be a string. We set that equal to buildable. Now I should be able to just pass through is underscore buildable, and I forgot a capitalization on that string there. And there we go. Now we have no worries in the future about using this. It can just be passed through like so. But now we know it's buildable. What do we want to do? Well, we know what tile is buildable and exactly at what position. We now want to just go and do one more if check. We want to go if cell data is equal to true. Now I could just leave it like this, or I could go is equal to true. There's a bunch of other things you can do. I'm just going to do this. Actually, we'll do this for readability's sake. This is really good if you want to just go from readability. Next thing I want to do here is call a function called place_tower, and this is something we haven't actually grabbed yet, or we haven't created yet. So to give us a little bit of a head start, let's come down, let's go func, so create a new function. We're going to call this place_tower of void return type, and for now we're going to pass. So a really good thing to think about here is what we're actually going to need to place the tower. Well, we need our tower, right? So that's what this is, the tower packed scene. We need to know what we want to add it as a child of. So for now, I'm just going to add it to the main scene as a child. So I can just use add child and it will just add it straight to the main tree. And then we're going to need a position. Now that's the hard one to think about right now. So let's get the tower spawning in, right? Let's get the tower being instantiated and added. So we're going to create a new variable for tower, or var new tower. And this is going to be of type node 2D, since that's our tower type. We're going to set that equal to tower packed scene dot instantiate. Now after that, we're just going to write add child, so it'll add to the main scene and pass through the new tower. So position. Well, this is the cool thing. If we sit here, right, and we think about it, we're already getting the position inside of unhandled input, right? Now, if you know enough about coding, you'll know that if we sit there and go new tower dot position is equal to cell_position, which is, you know, what we're grabbing before, this is going to be unhappy. And it says it's because it's not declared in the current scope, which means this function doesn't actually have access to this function or this variable right here, because it's not a global, it's a local variable. So how do we give this function access to a local variable? Well, this is where parameters come in handy. So inside the parentheses of our place tower here, at line 20, we are just going to sit there and go cell_position, and we're going to type that as a vector2 I. Now, as you can see, this error went away, but a new one popped up. Right here, when we're actually calling this, that's because we now need to pass through a parameter for this to actually be able to run correctly. So what parameter do we want to pass through? Well, of course, we want to pass through that cell position, right? We want to pass through this cell position right here. If I hit Control S and save, what's going to happen now is it should run actually smoothly. So let's go and just test it. Let's hit play. We'll scroll around. That works fine. Oh, we can't place on any of these tiles, but we can place here. And look at that new issue. As you can see, we're clicking on tiles that we can place, but it's placing in the top left corner. Now, why is that, right? This is one of those moments where you have to sit there and remember that when we're getting the cell position, we're doing two things. We're going tile map layer dot local to map tile map layer get local mouse position. So this is basically making it, you know, very map localized, and this is just the local map position, which means we want to get accurate tile placement. We need to, once again, instead of dividing our position by 64, which is pretty much what this is doing here, we now need to times our cell position by 64. I'm going to hit Control S and save, click play, come over and click on the tile. As you can see, we now have towers being placed. We can now place as many of these as we want, providing they're on the placeable tiles. But I'm going to show you another thing. If we come over to our left here, under the scene tree whilst the game is running, we see that there's a button called Remote and Local. Local just shows us what we're currently looking at. Remote allows us to see what's actually going on in the game. Now, all of these Node 2Ds here are towers that we've placed. Let's hit reset real quick, hit play, and I'll show you this in action. So, if I click around, nothing's happening, and if I click on one of these tiles, you'll see a new tower just popped up. I click another one, another new tower, and another new tower, and another one, and another one, and another one, and we can just kind of fill these out. Now, what happens if I click on the same tile again, right? On another buildable tile again? Let's find out. Oh. I don't know if you could see, but the scroll bar is getting longer, or shorter, and shorter, and shorter. That's because we're still adding all of these tiles. Now, what I'm going to say is, that is pretty much what we're going to be handling in this video. We have handled some highlighting and some object placement and some data reading. This has been like It might seem short and simple, but it's actually a really, really good thing to know, because now you know how to actually interact with tile maps and custom data. In the next video, we'll actually be kind of adding these towers into groups, keeping track of them and what they need to be doing, and stopping them from being able to be placed on the same tile, and just so much more. As always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment or just come and hop in the Discord using the link in the description. I hope you have been enjoying this. I know these have been a bit, spread apart, and I'm looking into kind of increasing the scheduling for these to put them out more and more often. But for now, have a good day, a great game dev journey, and I will see you in the next one.